Okay, in this demonstration, we're going to take a look at a comparison between the Microsoft Business One SQL environment and the SAP Business One HANA environment. Essentially, it's the same functionality across the board. Same code set, same key modules, but there are some subtle differences. On the Microsoft Business One SQL version, this can be deployed on-premise, it can be deployed in the cloud, and it can support hundreds of users. On the HANA side, it can be deployed also on-premise, it can be deployed in the cloud, but it can support anywhere from 1 to 1,000 plus users. It's been benchmarked at a very large number of users. So the HANA version is probably a little more scalable than the Microsoft SQL version. Now, some of the other subtle differences here is that the Business One SQL, this will support low to medium volumes. So an example might be 1 to several hundred orders a day. It requires less hardware. There is business intelligence. It comes with a product. It's created with crystal reports and business objects. And it does require a little bit of IT expertise in order to create new dashboards. And then also, of course, it's the traditional Microsoft SQL database. And there's a lot of people that know SQL. And you can learn SQL pretty easily with books available at the library or even community colleges. On the HANA side, this supports a low to very high volumes. So an example might be companies that get somewhere from 1 to several thousand orders a day. The HANA version does require more hardware. Also, the business intelligence comes with crystal reports, just like the SQL version, but the HANA version includes a tool called Pervasive Analytics. And Pervasive Analytics, this was actually developed for the big SAP. And SAP spent millions of dollars developing this business intelligence tool. And they've included it in standard product for SAP Business One HANA. And so it does deliver some pretty impressive functionality, and we'll take a look at that. And then lastly, HANA is a SQL compliant database. So the same SQL knowledge that an individual has is transferable over into the SQL environment or to the HANA environment. Now, if we take a look, let's first bring up the Microsoft SQL version of SAP Business One. And so you can see here that in the SQL version you have different cockpits, and the different cockpits provide areas of the software. In this case here, everything related to finance, service, sales, or back to my home cockpit, which is the first thing I see when I log in. The cockpits are made up of widgets. And in order to create or populate a cockpit, you can drag and drop and you can move things around. And if I wanted to add a dashboard, let's say, I'd simply drag the dashboard widget and drop it where I have room. I'd size it however I want. And then I can select from one of the 6 standard delivered dashboards that come with the SAP Business One SQL version. And so maybe I want to put in something like a accounts receivable aging into my home cockpit. And that'll display the dashboard. Now these dashboards will refresh at whatever interval you want. And so it's up to the user or up to a company decision as to how often these dashboards will refresh. So this is what the cockpit looks like in a SQL environment. Now a couple of other things in the SQL environment I'm going to go through real quick is let's go into a sales order. And so when we're putting in a sales order, as an example, or any form for that matter, you've got the toolbar up top, just like you'll see in the HANA version. But there are some differences here. And let me just give you an example. I'm going to start by keying in an item number, and we'll select an item. Now, of course, it shows me, all of the fields that I choose to see. What do I have in stock? In this case here, I don't have any of these in stock. But what I can do is in the SQL version, I can right mouse click and I can look at an available to promise. And sure enough, I can see I don't have any in stock. Now, if I had some purchase orders or some production orders that were scheduled to be received, those would show up in my available to promise. And so I would have the ability to see exactly when I can promise this to the particular client. The other thing that you have in the SQL version is you have a search capability. So for example, I can search my data or I can search menus. If I want to search my data, Maybe I'm looking for everything that to do with my customer Earthshaker. So we'll key in my customer and we'll go ahead and click on search. And this goes out and it gives me a search and it says, okay, we found 2 business partners, and that's pretty much it. I can drill down and get to the business partner, and I found what I was looking for. Again, I can also search my menu system for certain things if I don't know where it's at in the menu. Now, on the HANA side, let's go into the HANA environment. And you can see in the HANA environment, it looks slightly different. It's a different look and feel, although it's the same key modules and the same functionality. In the HANA environment, in this case here, I've got one cockpit, and I'm looking at what we call a Fiori cockpit. One thing to keep in mind, too, by the way, is let's go in real quick and just talk about this. Here I have the Fiori cockpit turned on. Now, this is not available in the Microsoft SQL version. I can turn it off, and I can run the standard cockpits I just showed you with the Microsoft SQL version. So I don't have to work within the Fiori cockpit, but it is new, and so that's the one I've chosen to show today. So the Fiori cockpit basically gives this user, Mike White, one cockpit, but it's a cockpit that just really goes on forever. It can contain as much information as I want. And another nice thing about these cockpits here, or at least the Fiori cockpit on HANA, is that I have some pretty extensive drill down capabilities. So for example, if I want to look at my outstanding commissions, I can give this a double click. And this takes me into an advanced dashboard where I can get more information. And so I can see everything that backs up those statistics. I can look at things like gross profit, opportunities by stage, response by marketing campaign, and again, it can go on forever. So I can see as many different detailed aspects that make up that commission as I want to, and I can have multiple pages listed across here. So the business analytics on HANA is a little bit more intense, a little bit deeper than the SQL deployment. If analytics is not that big of a deal for your company, you might be fine with the SQL deployment. For companies that do require a lot of business intelligence, a lot of analytics, the key differentiator here is that HANA is a memory resident database. And so it can calculate and perform these graphs and charts in seconds versus a minute on the SQL side. So let's take a look at how do we modify the cockpit. In the SQL version, you saw me drag and drop a widget. In the HANA cockpit, it's a little bit different. We click on the pencil icon, and this allows me to drag things around, drop them, move them up, move them down. I can change sizes of my dashboards and make them smaller, as well as make them wider or shorter. By hitting the plus icon, this takes me into a library of a lot of dashboards and widgets and other things that I can add into my cockpit. And so if we start up here at the top, you can see that I've got probably close to 100 different dashboards. Now, most of these come with a HANA deployment. In a SQL deployment, it comes with 6. And of course, you can create additional dashboards. In the HANA deployment, it comes with close to 100 standard dashboards. And then you have the ability to create your own. Another thing you get with a HANA deployment is you also get the key performance indicators. And it comes with a good 30 or 40 standard key performance indicators. And again, the tools to create your own. HANA also delivers some workflow types of widgets, workbenches. So for example, if my main role here is sales, then I might want to add the sales process into my cockpit. So I'll go ahead, plus icon, and then the arrow will take me back into my cockpit, and my cockpit's going to refresh, displaying any of the changes that I wanted to see. So we'll give it a second here to refresh, and then we'll take a look at the sales process. All right, now by clicking on the check mark here, that takes me out of edit mode. And now if I scroll down, you can see we've got this new element here. Let me refresh my, my cockpit. We're going to have this new element down here that gives us a very good idea of what the sales process is in our environment. And so in my system, I start with a quote and goes turned into an order. And on any one of these, if I click, it'll take me into that data entry form. And so these processes are completely tailorable. But I also have the ability to connect to any one of these, any number of different reports. So if I want to look at, say, all my open sales orders or other documents, I can do that real quickly and easily. So that's an example of the cockpits. Now, another differentiator for the HANA system is let's go into a data screen and let's look at a available to promise. Earlier we showed the available to promise in the SQL deployment. In the HANA deployment, let's go ahead and let's look at one here. Let's bring up some 33-ounce baby gel. And in this case here, I want to sell 4 master cases. And what this is going to do is I can right mouse click and I can look at the available to promise the same way SQL displays it. So this is the same display you would get in the SQL environment. How much do I have in stock? And do I have any purchase orders or work orders? And what are those scheduled delivery dates? So I'll have a running total and know exactly what I can promise and when. But HANA also gives you a different way to look at this. It gives you the ability to look at a more graphical available to promise. So here I can see for the quantity that I want, I don't have enough. So if I want, let's say, 5 master cases or something of that sort, I don't have enough. And if I use my scroll bar here, then I can go forward in time and see exactly when am I scheduled to get certain amounts, and then what's going to be my grand total here as of a certain date. The other nice thing about this is I can also look at multiple warehouses. So I could include multiple warehouses or look across the board at the entire corporate structure to see what I might have and when I might have it. Now in this case here, I'm out of what the customer wants until 5/15. And so I might choose to look at alternate items. And in this case, I can see I've got an alternate item. I can select that item, and then I can look at the available to promise for that alternate item. So this gives you some pretty nice graphical ways to look at your available to promise that you don't get on the Microsoft SQL deployment. Now another key differentiator within the HANA system is the cash flow analysis or the cash flow forecast. So let me bring this up. Now the cash flow forecast is giving me a balance of all of my cash related accounts, and it's time phase, so I can see what that balance is. And then it shows me my incoming and outgoing transactions on a time phase basis. And then I see the details below where I can drill down and actually bring up the documents or export this entire report to Excel. But what's nice about the cash flow forecast is how you can tailor it with just the click of a mouse. So for example, I might want to include things like recurring postings. I may have draft documents in Business One, and I might want to include those. And so I can click and include my draft documents. One of the other nice features of the cash flow forecast is this thing called a certainty level. Now, right now, if we go in and look at the certainty level, this shows us basically where we think we stand with the different types of transactions in Business One, and what the certainty is that those transactions are going to come to fruition. But let's say that, well, I'll give a good example is once I get to an invoice stage, yeah, I'm pretty certain the customer's going to pay. So I can change that to a certainty level 2. Now I do have some customers whose checks are starting to bounce, and so I might move this to a certainty level 4. On returns don't always come in, even though we send an RMA out to a customer, so I might move this out to a certainty level 8. And so I can drag and drop, and I can kind of play some what-if scenarios based on the current business temperature. And then I can save my changes, and this will redisplay my cash flow forecast based on whatever certainty level I want to see these transactions. So I can drag and drop and move this thing in and out, and it'll then reforecast for me what my cash flow is on a time phase basis. And so that's a feature that isn't available in the Microsoft SQL deployment. Now, in the Microsoft SQL deployment, we showed a search. Well, you've got the same type of thing available in the HANA deployment. I can search for a menu item. So if I want to search for where do I put in terms codes, the difference here is in HANA, it actually gives you and breaks down and redisplays the menu structure for anywhere the word term is displayed, which is really a nice feature. Now there's another search capability off to the right. And so if I click this, and let's say a customer calls and they've got a PO 777. And so I want to search my data for that purchase order number. Now this is doing a Google-like indexing search against the SAP Business One HANA database. And it comes back and it says, okay, for that purchase order, we found the order, we found the down payment for that order, we found the shipment, and then we also found the invoice. And on any one of these, if I hover over it, I can get the details of what that transaction was. And then if I want to find all related information to that sales order, I can click and I can see who is my contact, who's the business partner, what items were on that sales order, when was it delivered, and so forth. So you've got some real good ways to search through the data in a little bit of a nicer format than the standard SQL version. Now the last thing we're going to do is real quickly here, let's create a new dashboard and KPI. And this is really one of the key strengths of the HANA system. To do that, we're going to go into a tool called the Query Generator. Now the Query Generator is the exact same tool that's in the Microsoft SQL deployment. So nothing has changed here. But what we're going to do is we're going to bring up a list of tables. And in here what we want to do is we want to create a report against purchase orders. So I'm just going to grab my purchase order table. And I'm going to hit execute. And when I do that, it lists every single field in that purchase order table. And so we're going to save this. And we're going to put it in an area called Dashboard Demo. And we'll call this POs. So we'll go ahead and save that. And now I've got a brand new report. Now, typically that's not a report we would run to the printer because it's listing every attribute. But the reason we save that is, wouldn't it be great if we could pass that entire table over and be able to pick and choose the pieces of that table that we want to create dashboards and KPIs on. And so the next step is we're going to go into pervasive analytics. Now this is designed for non-technical users, and that's the real key. In the SQL version of SAP Business One, it does require a little bit of IT know-how in order to create new dashboards using business objects. In the HANA version, you're using pervasive analytics, which is a much easier tool to use, and it's extremely powerful. So let's start by creating a new dashboard. So we'll click on New Dashboard. And the first thing we need to do is we need to select the source for our data. And so we're going to take that query we just created called POs. And we'll go ahead and select that. And now I've got all the attributes in that purchase order table that I can use to build a very nice dashboard. And so as an example, what we might do is we might start pretty simple. Let's scroll down here and let's just say we want to see a count of purchase orders. And based on that count of purchase orders, we want to see that based on when the document was created, when that purchase order was created. And so we'll select that. And now off to the right here is my dashboard. And it shows me year by year what my count of purchase orders are. So that's all great. You know, maybe we want to narrow it down and say, well, what is it by quarter? So, you know, how many purchase orders am I putting in each quarter? Or all the way down to month. I can go down to week and a day as well. And so now I can get a time-phased trend analysis of what's my procurement like on a month-by-month basis. So that's a pretty neat tool. Now, this is showing us, though, the entire contents of the purchase order table. And so we might want to filter some of this information. And so if I switch filter and parameter, one of the things we want to filter on is we want to filter on the same date that we used earlier. So if we scroll down here and we grab the document date, let's filter on that. But this time, let's only look at this year. So we're going to put in a filter here, and now I'm seeing this year, how many purchase orders have I put into the system. and this is giving me a count of purchase orders. Now, a count may not be what you want. You might want something different. You might want to look at how much am I spending per month on my purchase orders. If that's the case, we remove the count field. And now what we look for is a field called document total. And in here, if we scroll down the list, here's document total, and we'll drag and drop that over. And now I'm looking at how much money am I spending per month on my purchase orders. Now, I can view this in not only a column chart, but I can look at this in a line chart if I choose to. I can look at this in bubble charts, scatter charts, table charts. Table chart actually gives me the details. So there's a number of different ways that we can look at this information and choose how we want to see our dashboard. So let's go ahead and save this, and we'll call this PO spend this year. And so we've got a brand new dashboard that we've created. Now let's go back to the Pervasive Analytics main forum here, and let's create a brand new KPI. And on this KPI, let's go ahead and grab the same data set that we used before. But this time what we want to do is let's take a look at, we want to grab the document total, what's our purchase order spend, and then we need a date dimension. And so let's go ahead and grab one of those. And let's look at, well, let's see the fields that we have here. Let's look for a good date field to use. Let's see. Document total. Let's see, in here, document time. There's going to be a date field in here somewhere. There should be 3 different date fields for us to choose from. And I may be scrolling through this a little too quick, and I may have missed it, but somewhere in here is a date field. And so we'll go ahead and find it. Here we go, document date. So let's grab that over here. And so right now it defaults to this year. And this shows what's my PO spend this year. Now maybe I want to have this month. How much have I spent on procurement this month? One of the other nice features of this is I can put a budget or a monthly goal in what I spend. And so my monthly goal on what I spend might be, let's say, $12,000. And of course, smaller is better. And so this is green. Now, if I uncheck smaller is better, it turns red, which means I need to spend more. So the KPIs will automatically adjust in colors based on different criteria. And now we'll just give this KPI a new name. We'll call this PO spend this month. Here we go. And so what we've done now is we have created a new dashboard, and we've created a brand new KPI. And we literally did that in less than 5 minutes. Now, to add that into our cockpit, we go back into the cockpit designer, and this will bring up our list of all the different dashboards and KPIs. And so we just scroll through this list, and we look for the new dashboard that we created. Let me scroll down a little bit here. It usually places the new ones down at the bottom. And so we'll take a quick look here, but here we go. PO spend this year. Let's grab that one. That's the new dashboard that we created. And then let's continue to scroll down into the KPIs. And one of the KPIs that we created was a PO spend. And so as we get down to the list here, here's the PO spend this month. And so we'll add that key performance indicator into our cockpit. And we do that by clicking on the plus. By clicking on the arrow up on the top left, that takes us out of the selection criteria of dashboards and KPIs back into the cockpit. And then once we're back in the cockpit, we can drag and drop and move these things around wherever we want them. We'll just go with the default settings. So now if I scroll down, what we're going to see is here's my PO spend this month, brand new KPI. And here's my PO spend this year. Here's the brand new dashboard we created. Now if we want to change the size of these things, we can. We go back into the designer mode, and we scroll down to where these are. And we'll go ahead and in here, we'll go ahead and we'll make this one a little bit larger. and we'll make it a little bit deeper. And with that, we'll go ahead and complete our change. And now we can see we've got a nice PO spend this year dashboard, and we've got our PO spend this month KPI. So to do that in the Microsoft SQL version, could probably have taken somebody who's well-trained on business objects 30 or 40 minutes. And so that's really the big differentiator within the two deployments. So if we go back to our PowerPoint here, again, both of these can be deployed on-premise or in the cloud, but the HANA version can support 1,000 plus users, so it's a little more scalable, and it supports an extremely high volume of data because it's a memory resident database. The other difference is the pervasive analytics, the ability for end users, if you give them the security, to create their own dashboards and KPIs. Whereas in the SQL deployment, you would be using business objects. And business objects is a little more challenging to use. So with that, thank you for watching, and hopefully you can make the right decision for your business.